It's our first Plume Denver, so it's great to have a bunch of our partners, our ecosystem friends, investors, and all of that in here, competitors, whatever. So I'm glad everybody here and talk about Plume RWAs and where things are going. So I've got a bunch of slides right now, right? I'm going to rip through them. I talk fast, right? And I tend to say a lot of bullshit, so just take it in stride, right? I've got no clicker to it, so I'm just ripping through it. So look, the name of the talk is very simple: why RWAs are going to zero, right? And so we'll talk about it and keep going. So, okay, look, and actually, it's crazy to see this. This is last year at Plume Denver. This is me, Ivy, and Teddy. I think Teddy did this already this morning, but I'll repeat it again. This is last year. We had barely raised any money. We're very poor. We stayed at a shitty motel. I remember we went into the room, and in the bed, it was covered in blood. And they had no extra, so we just slept in it, So anyway, it's just kind of crazy looking out and seeing this and looking back at this. And this is just 1 year ago, so just really grateful to everybody here and see you guys all out here. So anyway, if it's anything like everyone else, this was me this morning, right? And I'm sure everybody here knows the same thing and knows what I'm talking about, right? Like, it was an absolute shit show, right? And so if we go back, the reason why is this, right? BTC now, just like going off a cliff, right? And feeling terrible and feeling bad, right? It's both the price that's bad, but also sentiment, right? And if you look at sentiment, this is a chart that's very simple, right? It shows sentiment over time and price, right? And if we go back to August, right, this shows where we were. We are about at the same sentiment as we were at August. The difference is, in August, we were at 50K, right? And now, we're at 85, and we still feel like the world's falling apart and everything's fucked, right? And the reason is very simple, right? It's these things, right? Trump, right? Daddy Trump rugged us all, right? There's number one. His wife came out and rugged us again. And then third, the president of Argentina also rugged us, right? And so this is what happened, and this is why sentiment is bad, even though price is high, right? We take a look around and see that, excuse me, I've been doing a little drinking, so my throat's fucked up. But the sentiment is bad because people are sort of down bad and depressed from all the memes. People are getting rugged left and right, and we thought that Trump would come into office, right, and open up all these doors, and crypto would be great, and America, and blah, 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 and we end up as just crime season, right? Now, we think that will change, and I'm still very positive, right? And from the sentiment, this is a tweet this morning talking a bit about what people are doing, right? People are trying to rotate now, right, out of shitters and out of memes, right, into real things, real apps, real uses, real good. And so back to the fundamentals of crypto, what we want it to do. Right? And so the great rotation to RWA has begun, right? And so this is obviously just a joke, right? But, you can see here that people are starting to come back into RWAs, right? And also, I just thought this was funny of hot dogs and controls. Anyway, but if we really go into it, right, this is the actual chart, right? We're looking at a 1 month chart here of tokens by sentiment, right? And by performance, right? If you look across the whole thing, basically everything is fucked, right? AI's down bad, right? DeFi's down bad, social's down bad, infra's down bad, everything's down bad, BTC and Ether down bad, but RWAs are up, right? And why is that, right? Is it because people want to rotate back to utility? People are hyped about real things and real utility, real yield? Unfortunately, no, but that's at least what people believe it to be, right? And so, unfortunately, right, the question is, are RWAs going to save us? And the answer is no, right? And so we'll keep going. Maybe real quick, I'll introduce myself. Plume, we obviously work in RWAs. We're the leading RWA chain and ecosystem and network out here. Real quick, it's just a bit of there's three of us, three Asians that run the company and started the company. And, we've come from places like, very crypto trad places, right? So Coinbase, DYDX, Robinhood Galaxy, and a bunch of great folks. And we've raised money from a bunch of great folks like Han Ventures, right? Galaxy, Superscript, SV, Hashkey, all of that, and a bunch of crypto native folks, right? So the founders of Injective, the founders of Omni, of Eigen, Wormhole, blah, 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 right? And then we also raised our Series A somewhat recently, right, from great folks like Brevin and Faction, right, Laser Digital, right? And so we've really tried to find this balance between crypto native people and trad people to kind of come in and help us bring this world to light, right? Now, maybe to take a step back, right? Before we talk about if this shit's going to zero or not, whatever, let's first define what it is, right? RWAs are very simple, right? The question is, what are RWAs? RWAs, right, from the Chainlink definition, it's about a digital representation of something real, right? So you take something in the real world, right, you issue a receipt token, and you put it out there, right? That's all these things. And it could be a bunch of things. It can be commodities, equities, currencies, bonds, or whatever, right? Now, people are hyped about this because they look at this chart, right? If you look at RWAs over the last X amount of time, right, we see that things are really going up, right? And really the change, right, has been a few things. Last year there was a unique moment in time, right, where off-chain yields are better than on-chain yields. That's what you saw right here, right? And then number two, we saw the BTC ETF and ETH ETF come in, right? And that means the institutions can now take this asset and go sell it to their clients, right? And if we know anything about institutions, they love to sell new shit to their clients, right? And so they're able to take this, sell this, and grow crypto in that way. Right? And so that's the total RWA value, right? And so again, because of that, a lot of the RWA tokens have gone up, right? It's not just last month, over the totality of the year, there's just Q4, but like Q1, but over the long arc, RWAs have been very positive and just overall a great thing, right? Now, the question really is, like, again, is it because, right, people want fundamentals, right? And the answer is no. When most people think RWAs, they think of this guy. Right? And this is a guy named Larry Fink, right? He runs a company called BlackRock, right? He's very loud about tokenization and very loud about all this stuff, right? And people tend to think that because Larry's here, we're all going to get rich, right? And it really comes down to this. You know, if we come to this, the RWA is large, right? So if you look at a bunch of these things, like, if you look at all these things, derivatives, real estate, stocks, debt, alt assets, all these things are hundreds of trillions of dollars, if not thousands of trillions of dollars. Very, very big markets, right? And if we look at crypto, right, still small, 2 to 3, right? So the very simple idea is this, right? If this guy takes his firm, which is a $12 trillion asset manager, and dumps into crypto, we'll all get fucking rich, and we're all happily ever after, right? That's as simple as most people think about RWAs. Unfortunately, it's just not true, right? Like, the reality is, right, Larry Fink, right, is just not going to buy Farcoin, you know? And like, so it's not going to really help us, right? And so they're going to do their own thing. Now, what is going to happen, though, because if you take a step back and look at the headlines, you will see a bunch of this stuff, right? And you do see a lot of things that sound very good and sound very positive, right? Citigroup doing tokenization, BlackRock, Larry Fink doing his thing, Visa doing tokenized assets, right? We've got State Street doing a credit card now, so you can go out and swipe your card, right? And use your crypto, right? Franklin doing stuff, BNY Mellon, Goldman, blah, blah, blah. All good stuff, right? Seems great, right? Now, the problem is this, right? If you take a step back, I was asking a couple friends recently about what got them excited about RWAs and like what's the most interesting thing that's happening and what do people care about, right? And what do they think is the most, and I was surprised to hear them say this, right? I don't know if you guys remember this, right? And shout out to the AVAX people here if there's any of them, right? There was an article saying that the DMV is now tokenizing $42 million car titles and putting them on AVAX, right? Sounds cool, I guess, right? Because, you know, you get to say things like the DMV, you have 42 million, it's a real use case, blah, 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 right? Now, if you just pull the sort of like, pull this back a little bit, right? The unfortunate thing is if you go back 1 year, right, the exact same firm consulting the DMV did this bullshit, right? They said they want to do it on Tezos and do the exact same thing, right? Excuse me. And so, you know, it's just a classic sort of like, you know, we're trying to bet on the institutions. Like, really, a lot of the the subtext here is that the institutions are going to come in and save us, right? And if you look at this, right, it's very clear that it's not, right? It's the same nonsense. They're coming in to do a bunch of bullshit, right? And it's the same thing as before, right? And even zooming out, right? If we look at Salesforce as an example, this is last cycle, right? Salesforce planned to do NFT cloud, right? Again, real use case. Let's do NFTs with our customers, right? Let's do loyalty or whatever, right? So if someone buys this thing, you can like keep track of them, blah, blah, blah. All great things, all real potentially, blah, blah, blah. But right, again, institutions almost always, right, end up being a top signal, right? And so if you actually look at when they announce this thing, this is the BTC chart. Like the minute they announce this, it just goes to shit, right? And so everyone thinks that the sort of BTC or the sort of like institutions are going to come save us and bring things into crypto and pump a lot of stuff in. It's just not true, right? Now, what is going to happen, right? And what is going to change, right? Now, we'll go to another example in the real world, right? This, for a lot of people, hopefully you guys know, this is an iPhone, right? And the iPhone was kind of a seminal piece of technology that we all use today and is a real thing, right? If we zoom out, though, right, and go back, the kids may not know this. This is called a BlackBerry, right? Like what this is like, you know, back in the day, right, bankers would get this and feel powerful, right, and walk around and talk about things, right? And at the time, even though the iPhone today has won, right? At the time, this was a real thing, right? You had the iPhone versus the BlackBerry, and there's a famous Steve Ballmer quote, the CEO of Microsoft at the time, right? That's talking about the iPhone, saying, look, this is just not a thing. There's no keyboard. It doesn't appeal to business users. There's no, it's not a good email machine, right? And clearly, that was wrong, right? And the distinction here, right, is the BlackBerry was focused on solving for the existing market today, solving for the B2B user today and taking the exact same thing they had today, which is on the desktop. You have a keyboard, you got a screen, you got email, and putting it into a smaller device, right? Versus thinking about a net new thing that you could be doing, right? Which is the iPhone, right? We have a full-size screen, we have the App Store, all kinds of stuff. That's what created the net new stuff, and that's what is different about this than before, right? And so that's what gives us great innovation like this, right? Like you can do, like this was one of the early apps in the beer drinking app, but really, more seriously, right? This is what actually drove change. Right? If we look back at what actually made things better and allowed the iPhone to win, it was by building products that took advantage of the native architecture of the iPhone, right? Which is location, it's push notifications, right? It's a new interface, and now you can actually use the phone as a remote control for the real world, right? That could not be done before. This is a net new thing that you could not do on the desktop. This is what drove change, and this is what drove adoption for the phone, and what ultimately led the BlackBerry to be nothing, right? Excuse me. And so if we draw the same analogy, thanks. So if we draw the same analogy to RWAs and TradFi, right? Carbon copying TradFi stuff, right, and putting it on chain leads to the same result, right? It's the BlackBerry, not the iPhone, right? And if we look at this, we'll get a sense, right? Take a look at this today, right? BlackRock BUIDL securitized product. Again, shout out to BlackRock. You know, look, it's a $650 million on chain today, right? 52 holders, right? And it's good, right? And it's exciting, but that's not net new stuff into the ecosystem, right? And this is the monthly active addresses, right? Like, it turns out no one's really using this, right? They're bringing stuff in. They're getting us to buy their bags. We're not introducing new liquidity, right? What they're doing is bringing new stuff in. That's all it is, right? We actually haven't grown crypto at all, right? We've actually shrunk crypto because now we're giving Larry Fink money. Right? So that's number one. Take another example. Ondo, right? Great, arguably the great RWA project right now, right? Same thing though, right? Look at OUSG, right? $384 million, right? 10,000 holders, right? Number of users and everything, right? It's still small, right? Because it doesn't have the real adoption, and it's built for an audience that's not here yet, right? If we think about who's on chain today, it's crypto people, right? It's not the trad people today. So if you build a trad product and put it on chain, you're going to get these numbers. Not bad, but not great. Right? Versus thinking about a crypto native product that has adoption, right? This is a product called Hyperliquid, right? I think a lot of people know this, right? Hyperliquid, right, is a perp stack that's become an L1, whatever, right? But what Hyperliquid has done, right, in the last 2 months, right, it's apples to oranges, TVL and is not, but the cumulative volume on the exchange is $20 billion, right? Incredible growth, and just like it's very clear that it has real product market fit. You can feel it versus BUIDL. If I had asked people in this room who's used BUIDL, right? Feel free to raise your hand. One. Perfect. God bless. Good. Good. So anyway, this is Hyperliquid, right? This is real growth. This is real adoption, right? Take another example, right? In this season's latest grift. We've got Sonic here, right, which is a $950 million in TVL, right? And if we look back at January, right, sub $30 million in TVL, right? And so that means in 2 months, they have more TVL now, right, than Ondo and BlackRock over the totality of 2 years building this thing, right? Again, it's very clear one has adoption, one is just kind of petering along and getting there. Right? And so it all comes back to this, right? Which is on-chain TradFi limits adoption. Again, going to the numbers are out of date, right? I was out a little bit too late, so I didn't update these. But you can see again, BlackRock TVL and volume and holders is going on to USG is the same thing. Versus when you go to DeFi, right? Again, these are alternative ways of accessing the same thing, right? If you want to buy the treasury today, right, you can end up going to Ondo, do a KYC, KYB, right? You can you have to be a qualified purchaser, QP, which means you need $5 million in liquid assets, right? You can only do 100K at a time. You can't withdraw all of that stuff, right? Versus if you actually want exposure to treasury today, the best way is probably to buy DAI. Right? If you buy DAI, right, and stake it, you get the same yield, right? It's not quite the same thing. You don't get the transfer rights, you don't own the asset, but you get the economic interest in the thing, right? And it's very clear that one has a bunch of volume and transactions and users, and one doesn't, right? And again, the reason is this, right, is when you go into the UX and the sort of focus for this stuff, the TradFi stuff today is illiquid, gated, walled garden, it's hard to use, sucks. Right? Versus the crypto stuff, right? It's liquid, permissionless, right? It's composable, it's usable. We all know how to use this, right? You click buttons and things happen, right? And so to take it back to RWAs, right? The thing that really does matter, right? And another example is everyone gets excited at this chart. This is from RWA-XYZ. Is one of the great projects out there. Shout out to Adam and them, right? This is the chart that shows RWA growth over the last year, right? We've really seen that with the BTC ETF and things have started to pick up great. And this is out of date. It's actually 17 billion now, which is great, right? But again, most of these things are the things we just talked about. It's treasuries, it's corporate bonds, it's private credit, it's all the stuff that we don't really touch very much, right? And so if you go to this though, right, what does actually have adoption? Again, what are we going back to? What's another example of real usage, right? What is the only RWA that matters today that works? It is a stablecoin. Right? And the stablecoin, the reason people forget about the stablecoin when it comes to an RWA is because the stablecoin is just crypto. You don't need to define it as a stablecoin, right? The only way and the only world in which you have to, like, there's no category in the world in which you take things like Pokemon cards, collectibles, watches, sneakers, financial instruments, bonds, and put them in the same group. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Right? The only reason we do that is RWAs are actually a grouping for things that we don't give a fuck about and we don't understand how to categorize. Right? Because when it does become useful, the name changes, becoming a stablecoin, right? It's a descriptive name, not a categorical name, right? And you can see here, right? The stablecoin, again, has real adoption, right? And the RWA stuff is trivial, it's tiny, right? And so when you think about adoption and growth, this is the distinction. You have to focus on the crypto native usage, you have to focus on that, and that's why our perspective has always been to start from the bottoms up, start from the community, start from the people, and build up from there. Right? And so that's what we're doing, right? And what we're building is not this TradFi, it's this, right? If you guys know what this is called Farmville, right? I used to play this a lot when I was in COVID and didn't know what to do at home, right? And like basically, right, you can like buy different things, you can interact with things. And the idea is crypto, right, should be a seamless blend between the real world and the crypto world today, where I can rotate in. I can gamble on Farcoin, right? I can hold a bunch of AI16Z or whatever the hell it is, right? Loop the hell out of it. I can rip around on Sonic. And when I want to, I take those profits and I dump it in here, right? Maybe I own a bunch of solar farms as a result that print yield, right? Or maybe I then put it into a fleet of Starbucks that are printing cash, or I buy some T-bills, right? But the idea is I can swap and go back and forth between these things seamlessly. Right? We can click buttons and interact with the real world, right? Versus replicate TradFi on chain and do another version of Wall Street, right? I didn't like Wall Street the first time, right? So let alone doing it again, right, on chain. So that's kind of our perspective of what we're doing with Plume and why we think RWAs are the wrong frame, right? Obviously, we're in RWAs, so we're bullish on the category. But I do think we need to sharpen up how we communicate this story to the market, how we talk about what is useful, what is not, and how we build real traction and adoption to make these things happen. Right? Until then, it's going to be jerk-off stuff, and it's fine. It's still good. Like we still need to do it to grow, but we can really accelerate this, right? If we do it the right way, right? And so the idea really should be two things. If we follow the path of the stablecoin, right? It's not an RWA. It's just an on-chain asset. It happens to be the US dollar, right? And if you follow the path of the stablecoin, how did the stablecoin grow? The first step was solving for crypto people, a market that existed that was already here, right? You built it for crypto people to hold value, to make tighter trading pairs, right? To all this kind of stuff, right? Over time, as you had that adoption, right, you had a secondary effect. We had emerging use cases, which is one, you can hold value from the US dollar, right? So people in Latin America that are bleeding cash because their currency is shit, right? Or in Africa, right? Like you can end up holding this dollar and getting value out of it. So that's a really important part of this, right? Number two, right, is after that began to expand and then you begin to onboard net new people. So it's a slower path. Right? Because it's easier right now to go to the big TradFi folks and try and get it done. And I think we still do it. Don't get me wrong, right? We have a direct relationship with a lot of folks. We work with great partners in the Insto side of things. We think there's a lot of important things happening there. We just think it has to be both. It can't be one or the other, right? You have to do the trad stuff, but you also have to focus on crypto usage and crypto adoption, right? And so just to kind of zoom out, right, again, what are we doing at Plume, right? This is the quick overview, right? Plume is the sort of largest ecosystem for RWAs, right? And the largest ecosystem largest network, for RWAs, right? And when you look at the things that we do, they feel more crypto than trad, right? We have over 180 protocols building on us today, right? It represents billions of dollars in assets, a lot of TVL coming in, and then we've built a real community, right? And that's why all these people are here today, right? We've really focused on making sure we have a lot of followers on Twitter, which one, cool, two, who gives a shit? The more important thing, right, is that people on our testnet actually used it, right? There were wallets coming in, right? People clicking buttons, transacting. We were able to use that and turn that into a pre-deposit campaign where we brought in over $50 million. So all these little things mattered to kind of showcase the community is what matters and we're people first, more bottoms up versus top-down trad stuff, right? Again, we do both, right? And, excuse me, when you look at the question everyone always says is why a chain? Right? And I think it's a very fair question, right? Because I don't like to bridge to anything, let alone Plume, And like once I'm on there, I'm just going to stay there, right? So the question is why to build a new chain? And the reason is you need network density to kind of bootstrap this ecosystem, right? You really need each chain has its own feel, its own style, its own thing, right? Solana right now, right? Well, it used to be the meme chain, it's probably the Malay chain now, right? But like, you have this feel where like, the community, the ecosystem, and the liquidity is all tied together, right? The Sol community, of which I count myself as part of, right, is the kind that sort of like apes DCA's $5 into 20K market cap shitter, right? Which is fine. But that's kind of what that is. Versus Base has a bit of a trad feel, right? And a bit of a normie feel because of the sort of relationship with Coinbase, and so a lot of the SocialFi stuff comes up, right? And so you have Warpcast, you have Friendtech, and these kinds of things, right? And so being able to bootstrap this network and build this thing end to end, right, is the important thing in how we bootstrap it. We're also not RWA maxis. We don't think everything should be on Plume and has to be on Plume, right? I think the world's a very big place, right? And it should go everywhere, right? But to bootstrap this and to start it, we want to go this way, right? And so, you know, and we've seen that this. We've seen some examples of this working, right? I mean, we had a few protocols come to us, right, on one side, you know, coming to us from Base in a couple different places, had a whole thing, right, with Jesse doing a bunch of tweeting about it. It's like a whole thing, they're making it happen, right? And then when they launched, unfortunately, the reality is this. Launched, 0 buyers, 0 users, nothing, right? Came to Plume and granted still testnet, a couple 100,000 users, a couple 100,000 transactions, right, net new, right? And we linked them up with some of our LPs, got some money. Right, number one. On the asset manager side too, same thing, right? One big asset manager said the same thing. We've talked to every chain, ecosystem, network out there, right? And the problem is, right, it's all a pain in the ass to work with, because if you want to bring something on chain and actually make it useful, there's 15 steps, right? I got to bring the asset on chain, I got to tokenize it, I got to do initial liquidity, I have to find protocols to distribute it through, I have to have a community that wants to use it, and then ultimately, if I make it composable, I have to get in touch with all these protocols and set up these liquidity pools and make it a whole thing. Right? That thing takes a long time. We were not the first choice, right? That would be stupid for them, honestly, right? But they came to us because they couldn't get it done with us. It's taking too long with ARB and Sol, wherever it might be, right? And so that's kind of what this is, ultimately. Right? We've built this purpose-built ecosystem in Shannon, so we're excited to have us all together, right? We really think at the end of the day, you know, RWAs are a growth story for crypto. Right? We want to make this market bigger. We want to bring more liquidity. We want to bring more money and bring more net and bring more users in. Right? And so we aggregate projects, community liquidity to make this a thing, so we can bootstrap this network and this ecosystem. Right? And this is ultimately what you get. Right? You can tokenize, you can capitalize the stuff. Right? We have a bunch of liquidity partners who can seed stuff. Right? And ultimately, right, you can distribute this through DeFi. Right? And so ultimately, the chain itself is a combination of a couple different things. You know, right now people like to say the word purpose-built or whatever, or app chain or whatever. It's a bunch. Like, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's a chain. Right? And we've taken certain features and built them into the chain to make it easy. So Plume is the easiest place to kind of bring things on chain. It doesn't have to be through us. It can be through one of our many partners. Right? But it's an option if you want. And Next is a way to bring data on chain as well. Both of those things today are options. People can do whatever, but ultimately it comes into this ecosystem. Right? And again, I won't bore you guys with this. The ecosystem is a lot of things. When we think about RWAs, that's why I like the Farmville analogy, because it's not just trad stuff. Right? Trad stuff is part of it, and a heavy part of it, don't get me wrong. But we have a lot of stuff. Pokemon cards, synthetics, you have watches, you have alternative asteroids, solar, all kinds of stuff. Right? And very exciting things to be able to roll. And I've met a bunch of people in crypto that do all kinds of crazy shit between the real world, right, and crypto, right? They're aping meme coins and then rolling things into gold, right, or whatever it might be, and all kinds of nonsense, right? And that's exciting, and I think that's a really interesting thing to do. And to make that easy through a couple clicks of a button, right? I think that's the interesting thing we can do here, right? And again, the same words, right? I duplicating slides here, sorry about that. And ultimately, it comes down to this, right? At the end of the day, if we want to bootstrap this ecosystem, we need to have the community and the people here first, right? So if you look at this, it's a bunch of people talking about Plume, and we've been really grateful to have these people help us, right? People like rocking the swag, of course, somebody getting a tattoo, which I thought was nuts, and all of that, and then and actually another person did it again recently, and so we were, you know, again, it's kind of crazy, but we're grateful to have these people here building with us. Right, and so that's the ultimate story, right? Is we really think that ultimately RWAs as a category should disappear, right? Because if we do this right, each individual subset, AI, PayFi, whatever these things are, become their own thing, right? That sort of describe the actual activity and what it should be doing versus this generic category of RWAs, right? Financial instruments, treasuries, they're all their own thing, right? And so what we want to do is build this ecosystem to bootstrap this stuff. We've partnered with Layer Zero and a bunch of other great folks out there to bring this to other chains and ecosystems as well. Right, again, we're not RWA maxis. We want to help people do what they already do today. When things are up, you want tokens, right? You should do that. When things go to shit, right, as they always do, right, people go to RWAs, the stablecoin. What we're doing is expanding the service area in which you can interact with that at that point, and allowing you to do things around DeFi or whatever it might be around RWAs. We call it RWA-fi. I'm working on a better name. All right, so if you have a better one, let me know. But anyway, that's kind of the short story. Just want to say thanks to everyone for coming by. Really appreciate it again. It's, you know, we're really grateful to just have everybody out here and you know, talking about everything RWAs and really making this a thing. I think we're very, very early in the game still, and there's a lot to come. So thanks again. There's food and drinks and all that kind of stuff. Feel free to come find me whenever after. I'll do one of these just because I can't remember shit otherwise. But, all right. Perfect. All right, smile. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.